Hamapeles, tumtum androgenous. A woman who miscarries, a tumtum is a child whose gender we cannot determine because he's covered over, she is covered over. Or an androgenous has elements of both. So Teishav L'Zoch in the Keva, since we don't know what it is, you have to sit for male and female, which the Gemara is going to explain is 14 days of Tumah and 26 days of Tara, Chumras on both sides. Now, Tumtum V'Zoch, if she miscarried at the simultaneously a Tumtum and a male, right? Or an androgenous and a male, androgenous is Zochar, Teishav L'Zoch in the Keva, it's also the 1426 bit, right? 14 days of Tumah and then an additional 26 of Tara.
Quick question.
Yeah.
Is it tumtum always a tumtum?
No, so you can reveal it, but the old days they didn't always do the operation. Now there's no such thing as a tumtum because you wouldn't leave it closed. But in the old days, yeah. Okay. So usually, by the way, tumtum though has problems. I mean, it's a genetic problem. It's not just that he's covered up. Okay, so if a person is nututu in a cave or androgenous in a cave, now this I don't understand, and the Gemara doesn't clarify it at all. And I tell you the truth, I honestly didn't take a look at the Bavli about this. I really should have. I didn't have time today. But if it's a tumta in the cave and androgenous in the cave, for some reason, Teishav in the cave will be Bilvad. For some reason, you only do the days in the cave, which means you could do straight 1466, 80 altogether. I don't know why. The Choresh had to be machmer like a Zocher as well, right? That you may Torah end after 40 days. It seems to be for the Yerushalmi, although there's mice been on the Yerushalmi, which we're going to see in a few moments, that the Yerushalmi holds these are two different shitas in the Mishnah, whereas the Mishnah is divided in half. And part of the Mishnah is talking about one shita, and the other side about the other shita. But I'm not 100% sure. I'm not even 75% sure if that's the case. You'll see the Yerushalmi to see if you agree with me or not. Says the Gemara, Yotze Kedarko. If the fetus comes out chopped up or distorted. When it comes out the majority, so then it's born. Yotze Kedarko, if it comes out the normal fashion, Achi Yotze Rov Rosho. It's until most of the head comes out. Ezu Rov Rosho, what's the majority of the head? Misha Teitzei Patachto. When the forehead comes out, that's the majority of the head. Hamapelis Venio do a Ma'u, if she miscarries, you don't know what it is. Teishav L'Zoch in the Keva, she should sit for both male and female. Imil Dua Im Vladhu, if you know if it's I knew I would make a mistake. That's only in your it should have to do a mao teshev zon the keva im you're doing vladu. If you know that it's a child. If not, teshev l'zochor in the keva or niddah. If you don't even know if it's a child, then of course you have to assume she's a niddah as well. If somebody miscarries 40 days after conception, and you don't assume it's a child. Why? For the first 40 days, the child is not a valid fetus. The 41st day, then we suspect it could have either been a male, a female, or nothing, in which case she's a nida. If it's a male, after 41 days, so we assume it's a male, not a female. Nida Yom Shani Vechad. It's a nida. It's only uzach nida. It might only be a male or a nida. Yom Shmani Vechad. If it's the 81st day, Teishul V'Sach and the cave in a nida. Then, if it's the 81st day that she miscarries after conception, then she sits for Zach and the cave in nida. Shah Zachar Nigamar L'Arboy Vechad, because the male is completed after 41 days. When the cave is Shmani Vechad and the cave after 81 days, see how the conception periods are different. Chachami argue on this. They said Echor be a Zohar, Echor be a Stekeva, Zev and Zel Boy Bechor. They're both 41 days. It's not different conception periods for a male and a female. Okay. Says Mara Kohen Detian. 8 times it says Teshev L'Zochar in the Keva. 8 times it says that she sits for a Zochar or in a Keva. It's for both rather. It's Yud Dal Tmeim. It's 14 days of Tumah. The Chav of Term and 26 days of Tara. Noisel chumei zachar, and we noisel leh chumei zachar chumei the nekeva. We give her the stringencies of both male and female. Hadodat Omar, you should know, however, that's lebesa. The chumrah that shiur may Torah stop after 26 days, meaning after 4 days are up, is only vis-a-vis your husband. But the chumrah vis-a-vis taros, as we mentioned previously in the Masechta, is teishem nekevas for to extend your may Torah and be considered to be not fully Torah until all 80 days have elapsed. Okay? Now, the next part of the Mishnah said, tumtum in the zachar, andreganus v'zachar. If you have a tumtum in a male and andreganus in a male, teishem l'zachar nekeva, she sits for both male and female. The chosheshin l'zachar. And we assume that potentially it was a male, right? We assume that there was a male because there was a male there. Tumtum v'adreganus, so we assume both male and female. Tumtum nekeva, l'adreganus nekeva. So then, if it's tumtum nekeva and adreganus nekeva, teishem nekeva bilvad. The Mishnah said she only sits for nekeva. Ve'en choshim l'zachar. She doesn't sit for a zocher, which seems to be a contradiction. It seems to be a contradiction I was asking. That in the beginning of the Mishnah, although I'm not 100% sure this is what Yerushalmi means, but in the beginning the Mishnah said there was a tumtum a zocher, a tumtum to keva, so then tumtum and a zocher, or the dragonus a zocher, so you put sit for both zocher and the keva. But it was soon the keva and dragonus and the keva, you only sit for female, not for male. How come? Why the difference? So it says the Gemara, now this tells us that if she gives birth, this teaches us that if she gives birth to a male and a female, or a female and a male, she sits dafka for a female. In other words, the end of the Mishnah seems to connote, or the seifa of the resh of the Mishnah seems to connote that a different sheet that we've been saying all along. Till now I've been saying along, if she gives birth to a male and female, then the chumras of both. But the end of the Mishnah seems to indicate that if she gave birth to a tumtum and a nekeva, or an adraganus and a nekeva, you only give her the halacha of a female, which means she has the 1466 straight up, not the 14 l'chumra on the one side and the 26 l'chumra on the other side, but rather 1466 straight. Which again seems like it's a contradiction to the Reisha. The Reisha tells us you have to do 14 days of Chumrah at the beginning, and then only 26 days of Torah at the end. But the Sefer seems to be saying that in every time it's in a keva and a tumtum, a keva and an adraganus, and from that the Gemara is inferring also in a keva and a zachar, you would give straight up zachar, which I don't really understand why we don't give chumras of both. I'm not sure. Okay? Straight up nekeva. I say straight up zachar. No, straight up nekeva. So the truth is, I can even understand, that's why I don't really understand what's going to Yerushalmi. I can even understand, in a case of death, I'm thinking, now I have a shot now. It took me all more than, now I finally got it. No, I was wrong. Okay? All of a sudden it struck me. It struck me. The only time we say it's a chumrah, and now go back to the Yerushalmi now the way I just figured out. The only time we say it's a chumrah, teisha was all the cave was if you're mesupach what it was. But if there definitely was a male and a female, then you go definitely after the female. That's the pshat. Where we don't know what it was, then we do both zachar and nekeva, because from mesupach we don't actually know what was going on. But we know definitely there was a male and definitely female. We don't give the chumras of both. We just give the status of a female. Do you understand that? If there's twins born, right? Only gives birth to twins, one male, one female, so we just give the status of a female. Which is a kula, but that's the halacha. No, the Torah never really reveals that halacha, but that's halacha. Oh, so a tumtum is a suffix, right? But the Gemara is saying imanafshach. He's either female or male, right? If he's a female, so then you give straight up female days. And if it's a male, then when a male and female are born together, you give the female days. because that's no worse than if definite twins were born. It's no worse than if definite twin male and twin female were born from the same womb.
That's what happens when definite twins.
That's what it means. So it just struck me right now. Definite twins were makel. We don't give chumus to both. We say it falls straight up in the keva. That's what the Mishnah is saying. Let's read inside again. Now they figured out. Tumta v'zochar, starting from the two dots again. Tumta v'zochar and dregus v'zochar. It's the tumta the male, dregus the male. Teishel v'zochar in the keva. So she has to sit for zochar in the keva. V'choyshishin l'zochar. Here we take into account the male. I don't know why talking though. No, it's sits for both gives her a chumrah on both ends. 14 days of tumah, she's forbidden to her husband, and no, if it was both, the kid takes off 40 days. She only gets 26 days of tara where her blood is started. She doesn't get the full 66. What? No, so Gemara is saying, but now I'm still not sure if I was saying correctly. I think the Gemara is saying that if they're twins, you go straight up like a female, which means 14 days of tumah, but then 66 days of tara, not just 26. But now I'm not sure. Yeah, the thing is, one second. Tumtum v'zachar, adrei v'zachar, teisha v'zachar on the keva, the chayshishin v'zachar. There we take into account. There we take into account the male for chumrah. Tumtum in the keva and dregus in the keva, teisha keva vad ve'ein chayshishin v'zachar. Why is that? Oh, of course, it's pashut. It's pashut. Tumtum is actually it's not pashut, but it's like this. I think tum is a jacob is a zachar, teishel is a nekeva. You can't subsume this case as complete nekeva because maybe the tumtum and jacob are both males, right? So in that case, you go after the male l'chumra because maybe there's no female in this womb because maybe the tumtum is a male and maybe the androgynous is a male, right? So therefore, in that case, you must go after both days l'chumra. You go after the 14 days of the. You go after the 14 days of the female to beginning, which is the chumra, 14 days of tumah, and you go after the only 26 days of tara after that to get up to 40 like the male, because you don't know if there are any females in this womb at all. So therefore, you have to assume that follows zachar l'chumra and the keva l'chumra. You have to take the chumras of both, right? To tundum zachar, dreidum zachar, teisha l'zachar and the keva, she sits for both male and female. The choshin zachar, we have to take account the male aspect. Tumtum and the keva, however, when the tables are turned, you don't know if there's a male here. It could all be female. Tumtum the keva, dreidum keva, teisha keva, you only have her sit the time of in the keva. Why only time in the keva? And we don't take the male to Gano. Hi, there could be that the tumtum is a male, not dregus is a male. Chada amara. This teaches us that even if we know for sure Yodas are in the keva, absolute biologically certain twins, which are male and female, that on the keva of a zochar, depending, it doesn't matter the order. First male, then female, or female and male. Teishel in the keva, the days of the male are subsumed in the days of the female. So where there might not be a female at all, so there we have to be choishish for zachar and for nekeva, for both male and female. But where there's a definite female and a questionable male, it's no different than a definite female, a definite male, and we only follow the days of the female. Okay, very good. When I was preparing, I was staring this, and couldn't figure it out, but finally now it's clear that I made a mistake what I wrote here.
This phrase, zachar nekeva, zachar.
I don't know whether the order makes a difference. Maybe you would say that the nature of the birth is determined by the first one out of the womb. I don't know. Okay. Says the Gemara further. What? Okay. Mechutav shiyatza rosh or mouth. What about if the kid was chopped up inside the womb and its head came out? Rabbi Yasser, Rabbi Yasser, Yispagum, Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Elazar, and Machlokas. Rabbi Yochanan, Rosh Hashanah, Rabbi Yochanan say you don't need the majority of his body; it's either his head or the majority. Either or works. Rabbi Elazar says no. Rosh Hashanah, his head is just like any other one of his limbs, and you have to have the majority. The head does not constitute a substitute for the majority; it's included in the majority. Okay. Says the Gemara, Masisa Pli Rabbi Yechon. The Mishnah seems to argue Rabbi Yechon because our Mishnah says Yotzim B'chutacham Mesuras. If he came out chopped up or in distorted, Mishiyotza Rubo. Once the majority comes out, it's a Kiyolud. Once he comes out, the majority. That's when he's born, not his head. The majority. It says the majority of his body. So everybody goes crazy with the Girsah here. Everybody, the Moshe, the Ephraim, the Mashbiach. The Shari Teres, so they all go crazy trying to figure out the gears to the next few lines. But there's one gear, there's one change of the Shnuin Uschos in the bottom, which you have in the Gemara, Mishir Shnuin Uschos between this Maraponim and Amud Yerushalmi and Gilgin Ephraim. A very simple, straightforward change, which makes it all understood without changing, I think, any other words. Yeah, if you just change this one word, you don't have to change a lot of things which everybody else changes. Pata Lord Yochanan responds. B'shiyotza instead of Rosho, Rubo. B'shiyotza, Rubo. In other words, this is about breech birth. When you follow the head, when the head comes out first. You follow the rove when the feet come out first. And the Gemara will clarify that momentarily. But first the Gemara gets interrupted in the middle. Okay, the Gemara will come back to that momentarily. Says the Gemara, Masnisa Pliga Rabbi Lezer. First the Mishnah Chapsan to now the Gemara picks Chapsan to ask a question of Rabbi Lezer. Lezer said that even the majority, that you need the majority of the fetus in the head is not suffice. What about the Mishnah said Yotza Kedargo came out the normal way, Achi Yotza Rov Rosho. All you need is the majority of his head. You don't need the majority of the body, so that's a raya against Rabbi Elazar. Let's say you need the majority of the body. Here it says, what do you need? Only the majority of the head.
Don't you need, I'm thinking about what the dead body, you're digging for dead body and Shabbos for a korban.
Yeah.
And you want to get to the nose.
No comparison, because here even a miscarried baby causes 2 months later. So therefore, even if it's dead, it doesn't matter.
But you won't know if it's dead until you...
It doesn't matter. If it's alive or dead, it still doesn't matter. If it got cut up after that much of the head was born, the forehead, there would be a birth visit 2 months later. Okay? Hada kadmaisa amra. Now, the Gemara goes back to the first question we asked Rabbi Yochanan. And again, this line also gave a lot of unfortunate grief. And the Mashbiach even wants to say it's later interpolation by one of the scribes who wrote over the Yerushalmi. But Lamaisa, it's very poshut. Hadak kadmaisa amara, the first case, which told us that Rosh Hashanah, the first case told us the head is not sufficient, right? Because it said you need Mishiyotza Rubo. So it says, more explaining what it already said in Amud Aleph, but expand a little bit. Patula Mesuras, that's where the baby was Mesuras. And we know Mesuras means flipped over. Like Sarsev Darshel means turn it over and expound on it. So that's why about a breech birth. So that's about a breech birth, that's why you need the majority and not the majority of the head. Okay? Rabbi Yehuda's son, Rabbi Shimon Lakish, had the same machlokes Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Elazar. Rabbi Yehuda said like Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Shimon Lakish said like Rabbi Elazar. Rabbi Zira Machavi Chavraya. Rabbi Zira showed the Chaverim. You know what the head of the majority of the head is? Pad Chaso, the forehead, but not just the forehead. Also Google so also with skull. So it's really a line like this, which is considered birth. It's called crowning, I think, in English. You have to have a line like this around the head. That's considered to be birth. Okay. How the Rabbi Gamliel boy? Sorry. How the Rabbi Gamliel Berebi Liani? The people in the house of Gamliel Berebi Liani boy calling Rabbi money. They asked in front of Rabbi Mikeva. Now here the Shari to the soul change the gears and I'll go with him. It says Mikeva the Mer Omar Vladu. Now, this is really going back on the Gemara we had back in Halacha Beis. I told you a couple of days ago that the Shari T'Sol says the Gemara in Halacha Beis, which belongs to Halacha Hey, Gemara in Halacha Hey, which belongs to Halacha Beis, and this is the one. Here it's about vis-a-vis, where Meir holds it's possible to have a bird-like form come out of the human being, out of the mother, and it can be alive, and it's considered to have halachos of fetus, right? And we had that, that Talmudic humor Gemara, goes up to the tree and say, "Here, birdie, come in and done to Yibum or Chalitza," right? So that was the case back there, right? So it came into Rameir Omar Vladu. So if that's the case, since Rameir says it's a Vlad, again, change the Ato to Rameir, Me'ato Abachrov Ena Bechor Lo Nachal Lo Kohen. If that's the case, the next child should not be a Bechor neither for Nachla nor for Kohen. Whereas that's the Bechor. In Thursday game Pish 9, that first bird, which was born, and also it's a Bechor vis-a-vis, Pidyon Abed. That should not be a Bechor. Now, the implicit question, which is not here explicitly, but Sharet Yisrael says is the question, is that in Bechoros, in the beginning of the 8th parak, Rebbe says, according to Rebbe Meir himself, that if the firstborn looks like an animal, like a bird, then the next child who's born is the Bechor vis-a-vis Nachla. Not vis-a-vis Kohen, because it's not Peter Rechem, it didn't open the womb. But the first viable child doesn't look like a bird, is the Bechor vis-a-vis Nachla. So how come over here the firstborn bird is the Bechor vis-a-vis Nachla, and there is no other Bechor vis-a-vis Nachla, vis-a-vis inheritance? Yet in Bechoros, where the same Rabbi Meir says that it's the next child who's the Bechor vis-a-vis inheritance. So it says Mara, Armalei, so responded, Tipata Shiotu Mesim. That's about a case where the child, there in Bechoros, where we say the next child is the Bechor vis-a-vis Nachla, so the first child was born still. In other words, the bird was born stillborn. Here, I'm talking about where the bird was born alive. Now, Rabban holds there's no such thing. That's what we said back then. Rabban holds it's possible that bird to be born alive, so that's why that firstborn bird or animal, whatever it is, comes out of the mother's womb. That's the Bechor vis-a-vis Nachlor and Kohen, not the next one. Whereas in Bechoros, where that bird was born dead, so then in that case, the next child is the Bechor vis-a-vis Nachlor. Okay? Now, says that's basically the end of Niddah. Sharet Yisrael advances as far that the next few lines are fragments from the Yerushalmi Kachim which we're missing, which is interesting. I don't know if it's actually true, but it is. They have nothing to do. Are you okay? Are you okay? The next few lines have nothing to do really with the Yerushalmi Niddah. Says the Mar, Rabbi Yitzhak Nam Sheri Lezer said, Gugoles, the skull of her oath of a bird is Berubo. Now this is not, and even Sion Yerushalayim makes this point, there's not talking about vis-a-vis, a bird born from a woman, it's talking about Hilchos Trefus. When is the skull of a bird considered to be crushed, that the bird is considered to be a trefa. So that's when it's missing the majority of the skull. The majority is not missing when it's majority skull's crushed in. Rabbi Zir Shem Rishmuel said, the windpipe of a bird is berubo. It's only a trefa when the majority of the windpipe is split. And that, in fact, is halacha, as we know. The esophagus is the majority. The trachea is the majority. The esophagus is a mashu, no matter how small the hole is. As uvdo kun Rabbi Yossi, a story came from Rabbi Yossi. Bechot shenike mole machat. It's a case that he brought the shaila of a case where the trachea had a needle prick through it. So he said back to him, the Rabbi Yossi said, don't we know what the majority is? In other words, this is obviously not the majority. Why are you coming and asking such a question? Okay? Hadra Percham Bapolis. Benos Kutim, now I'm going to skip the last Gemara, which is at the end of Alachal. We're just going to read the Mishnayos in the Perek. We'll leave the Gemara for the Siyum. Benos Kutim. The daughters are, I really am going to cheat. I'm just going to read straight up here. I brought it for this purpose. What? Yeah. I hope I brought the right value. Benos Kutim Nidos Me'arei Sasan. The daughters of Kutim are Nidos from their cradle. Kutim Etayim Mishkav Tachta Kelion, and the Kutim render the lower mattress, the one they sleep on, Kelion, like the top mattress, Neshem Bole Nidos, because they cohabit with the Nidos. It's interesting how they cohabit with the Nidos, even though it's a Torah stricture. So the Pnei Moshe brings down a long interpretation, which is also here, is that they hold that green is a color which is tamei, and therefore they mess up their Niddah cycles by counting green as a Tamei color. Yes. Okay. So that's a.
The reason why the Yerushalmi has switched between counting the Mahala versus the bottom.
Why?
Because somehow it's saying that it's
Tamei, yeah.
and they wouldn't follow the majority. The majority is the Chachamim. So therefore, Yerushalmi
maybe could be. Vein Yoshua called Dam, and that's the reasons. The next line we've named because really they sit on every blood tumor. But one is not liable in their account for entering the sanctuary on their tumor. Vein Sarmalim as a tumor knows one born truma on their account. Because they do go to the mikveh, so they might, it's hit or miss, right, if they get their cycles right or not, and therefore it's always a suffix. Okay? Next Mishnah. Benos Tzedokim, the daughters of the Sadducees. By the way, tell me this ain't change of gears between the Gemara and what I'm reading you. When they go in their father's footsteps, Arain Kutios are the same like the Kutios. Meaning that they make the same mistakes as the Samaritans. Pirshul Aleches. You want to look in the Gemara? What do you want to do? You want to look in the what? Mishnah. Pirshul Aleches. So if they did tshuva, they start going Jewish pathways, and the Harein, so they're like Jews. Rabbi Yezid says no. They always are considered to be like Jews. Unless they follow the ways of their the Sadducee fathers. In other words, we always assume that Stokin are going to follow the right halacha according to him, unless we know otherwise. So it's a question of whether their default is that they're good or not. Dam nochris, the blood of a shiksa, the dam Torah shemetzora, and the blood of which is a tar of a woman who has saras. Beishamai mitarin. Beishamai says there's no dam niddah of any sort, and it's not even one of the mashkin. Of course, it's not one of the 7 beverages that it should be machshir kabel tumah. Yerushalmi Niddah says no, it is like a discharge, keruka meimei raglet, or like a saliva and your urine, and we know the discharges of a mitzoras or metame, and they gave a nochris ta'aloch of a zava that also is metame. Damil letishlo tavla, the blood of a woman who gave birth to Aziyah the mikvah. Beishamim says keruko meimei raglea. It's like her saliva and her urine, and it's and therefore it's only tummy when it's moist. Basil says metame lach v'yovesh, that's metame when it's both dry and wet. It makes no difference. I'm not sure exactly why, but for some reason there is the Fukati has a long discussion of this. What's the status? If it's like blood, so then it's metame whether it's wet or dry. But if it's like a discharge, it's only metame when it's moist, because discharge is only the time when it's moist. However, Beis Shammai concede, Violetta's preserved, that if she gives birth as a zava, then she metame lach v'yovesh, then her blood is metame even if it's dry, because that's impure blood. And impure blood is metame if it's dry. It's other discharge has to be moist in order to be tame, but not impure blood. Hamaksha, a woman who has a difficult labor, and she's in Niddah. Kishla shlosh yom misocha chadas hayom. Here's where we had the difficult mishnayos, which Mr. Zuger alludes to in his speech, which have to do with the how many days she's a zava, how many days she's a Niddah, how many days she's a yoledis. If she's kishla shlosh yom misocha chadas hayom, if she was in difficult labor for 3 days, during the 11 days of months, which come after the 7 days of Niddah, during which a woman is potentially a zava, so then b'shav samei slays v'yolda, and then she rests for 24 hours, and then gives birth. So for 3 days straight she saw blood. Then she stopped for 24 hours and gave birth. So she's Yoledes, but she's also a Zava. And she has to wait 7 clean days after she stops seeing blood before she can have relations with her husband, which is like how we're machmir nowadays. We assume all women who give birth are also Zavas, and that's why even after even after 7 or 14 days are up, then now let's go back to their husbands until such time as they go through 7 clean days. Okay? Rabbi Shua says, Laila b'yom kileila Shabbos b'yom. Rabbi Shua says it's not 24 hours, but it's a day and a night that she has to rest in order to be a zava as opposed to a woman who had a difficult labor with bleeding therefrom. Sheshavsa min atzar v'lo min adam. And she has to have relief from pain, not from blood. In other words, even if she was seeing blood during that 24 hours, as long as she had relief from pain, then that's considered ready that she was a zava, and then the leda was a separate episode. Okay? Hey, kami kishuya. How long can you consider it a difficult labor to last? Even 40, 50 days. Says no such thing as difficult labor for more than a month. There's no such thing as more than 2 weeks. Now, if a woman has a difficult labor again, after having had, she quickly conceived again, after having given birth, and still within her 80 days. Okay, so this is a case which is not relevant, is not as that because nowadays you don't have law of Dam Torah. But there was Dam Torah. A woman gave birth, and 14 days later she was mutter to her husband, right? And she conceived during the 66 remaining days. Okay? Any blood she sees is Torah. Where all the blood which she sees is affiliated with the Dam Torah of the 66 days. The time Liz says no. When she becomes pregnant, starts giving birth again, of course it's going to be a miscarriage, right? But that blood is affiliated with the birth, not with the made Dam Torah. Amalo Rabbi Lezer. So they said to Rabbi Lezer, Mama Mokum Shirmer Dam Shofi. When the law is strict in regard to blood without pain, meaning a woman who gave birth after experiencing a discharge without pain and difficult labor 3 consecutive days during a ziva period is a zava, as giving birth while in the state, yet, nevertheless, Hekel v'dama kosher, we're lenient with blood which has to do with difficult labor, that blood is not dam ziva. Malkush Hekel v'dama shofi, here we're lenient with any blood, and we assume any blood is dam tor. Eidin shenoga v'dam kosher is not a kavachomer, that the blood of labor is not considered to be tamei. In other words, if a place where matame regular blood, dam koshi is not considered to be tamei, meaning it's not ziva blood. Here, where we're mako by regular blood, is not a din issue mako by the blood of the labor, difficult labor. So he said to them, no. You want to make a kavachomer, you only can prove as much as the kavachomer indicates at a minimum. She's not a zava, because this blood can be attributed to her labor. But she is tame as if she is a nida, so this blood is considered to be nida blood. If it's not dam toar, it's considered to be dam nida. What? Excuse me? Last Mishnah. Kol chadasar yom, for the 11 days between one menstruation period and the next. Ches kastar, a woman is considered to be soon to be tar. Yosh v'lo lo bodka, if she therefore she didn't check herself during those days, shogaga, either unintentionally, nansa, because she was compelled not to check, he's either even intentionally lo bodka didn't check, Torah, she's considered to be tar. He gives shas vesta, if beyond those 11 days her new cycle came, the time of the cycle, she didn't check, she did hear no evil, see no evil, speak no evil, lo bodka, harezu tmei, we assume she's tame, right, until she checks and finds that she's still tar. Her mayor says, if she was in hiding because she was afraid for her life, the time vessels came, she did not check. She is tar. Why is that? Because fear causes her blood to go away. She doesn't have period. but the days when a woman is a zava, and even days when she's keeping clean days, the day of Taro can correspond to the day of Tuma. She's assumed to be Tame, and therefore, in order to disprove her Tuma, she has to constantly be checking herself. Okay, that's that. Now there's a bunch of hashlamos. It's a little bit late, but I want to read you a few of them. Not the ones in the back, which are a lot of them, but a couple of them just from the what? Only 29. Just for the Amudei Yerushalmi, from the Amudei Yerushalmi Tinyana, on the bottom of you bring it down for Rokeach. Let's see when you read a bunch of them before in the next 10 minutes. Bottom Yud Alf Hamid Alf. Bottom of 21. You see the Amudei Yerushalmi Tinyan on the bottom? Okay, by Rokeach. That's the second white line. Rokeach Shoresh Liyira Kazav Shem Yerushalmi Yechos Choyvel Perka Choyvel writes the name Yerushalmi Babakama Hamaskis Hashem Choleis Tzarich Nidui. Somebody always mentions the name of God has to be put in a cherem. Ad Kan. I'm not sure which name. I'm Suma Dokoi. So the late Lefnei that Yerushalmi is not in front of us. Rokeach Etik Yerushalmi Rabbi Yochanan Ikla Lo Asra. Yerushalmi says that Rabbi Yochanan came to a certain place. Chazu Gavad Avakari Bismicha. He was reading while leaning. I was not sure what he's reading. I assume he's reading the Torah. While he's leaning, Amalei says also l'choy. Not allowed to read while you're leaning. Shem says V'atapo Amodi Madi. Because stand with me. It says Moshe was told to stand with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Right? Amalei said, Ba'bosani, what can I do? I'm fat. So therefore, since I'm fat, I have to lean on something. So he said, V'hitirlo. He allowed him to lean. Staying in circumstances. I guess Moshe Rabbeinu was lean and mean. Mordechai brings it down. For Leisel we don't have such Yerushalmi. With Fuz Shitamir, where it goes Saramazal, Mordechai Nishim Shkin Yerushalmi Soita. He writes as Yerushalmi that in Soita, but Leisel we don't have such Yerushalmi. Barokeach also it says Yerushalmi Ma'aser B'nei Yehuda ben Shemua, the Ma'aser of the sons of Yehuda ben Shemua, Shaboklem Zevim Yotzim Shlosh Meot Tzon. That wolves came. Zev is a wolf, right? Wolves came and had 8,300 sheep. Ubam Ma'aser B'nei Chachami, and the mites came from Chachami. The Yitiru Kebo Seyem, and they permitted their stomachs. I don't know why. We don't know where the place that Yerushalmi is. Barokeach means that Yerushalmi Tachko Beso Isa Chayav Levire. That actually is a typo. It should be Levire with an I. In other words, if you use dough to plaster your walls, on Pesach you have to burn down your house. So that somehow didn't make the cut of the Yerushalmi either. Lo Yadati Makoma. Rokeach. The Rokeach. The Spinel principle illuminated that one.
I mentioned that.
Yes, you can mention that one if you want. Rokeach Yerushalmi Arei Psachim Osim O Cheshbon L'Achar Yontif. It says you make a cheshbon after Yontif. I don't know with who, maybe with the goy. I don't know exactly who. You don't have that. Rokeach Yerushalmi Mesech L'Shvis Yerushalmi Rokeach quotes Yerushalmi Mesech L'Shvis. Rabbi Yitzchak Bar Acha B'Shem Rabbi Yossi. However, L'Fnei HaTeva. Some of you passes in front of the Omer of Rosh Hashanah. Ain't so ask Rosh Chodesh. Doesn't mention Rosh Chodesh Davi. Chab Bar Abai Avar Kami Tivusa. Lo D'Char Ratio Yarcha. There's a certain individual who went in front of the table. Below the Charesh Yarcha, he didn't mention Rosh Chodesh Am Rosh Hashanah, but Kausunei, and they praised him. The Mara of Chistoi says the mention of Rosh Hashanah works for both Rosh Chodesh and Rosh Hashanah. We had this actually somewhere in Yerushalmi. I don't know where. For Yesh Yerushalmi Yashon Rosh Hashanah Shabbos. Rosh Shabbos, I don't know what it is. Something I said, think Rosh Hashanah. Shabbos Amarav Zikaron Echad Oil Kan. Yeah, so this must be the Yerushalmi we had in Rosh Hashanah. That the Zikaron Echad Oil Kan Emiyati Bato Rosh Chodesh B'Tfilah So therefore we should take Rosh Chodesh out of davening. Came Shomer b'sof Shofros Yom Simchaschem Odechem Roshechem. In fact, we say at the end of Shofros, Yom Simchaschem Odechem Roshechem. That's enough. Rav Mafki l'Talmidei, Rav could command the students Lazkuri b'Musafin to mention in Musaf Olas HaChodesh u'Minchasa v'Soy l'Chaper Shnei Sfinim Kilchosim, which I believe we do have in Rosh Hashanah Shmoneh Esrei. Ayin Sham Leis L'Foneinu. We don't have this in us by Shvius, but I think we had it somewhere. Ayin Sham Sim L'Chav Dal. Rokeach Sim Reshu Dal Kosav Avo B'Tainis Acheros and other Tainis Vayecha Moshe. We read Vayecha Moshe, not a Tishbav, and not Yom Kippur. We read Vayecha Moshe Maftir and Dirshu V'Goymer. Yerushalmi Yoshem Perek Beis Tainis, and this Seder of the laning after Tainis is in Yerushalmi Yoshem Perek Beis Tainis. Leis Foneda, we don't have it in front of us. But Rokeach Shabbos Chabo Tainis, Shabbos comes out of Tainis. Oimer Shel Tainis B'Brach Hamishis. You mentioned the Tainis in the fifth Brach and Shmoneh Esrei. I don't know what the fifth Brach and Shmoneh Esrei is. No, on Shabbos. Login Avraham, Chaim Mesim, Ato Kodosh, Kaddish Shabbos, Ritzei, Shalom Rav, right? And being Shalom Rav. And Sim Shalom. That's the fifth Brach and Shmoneh Esrei in Shabbos? No, it can't be. Kodosh is the third. It's in Modim. No, it's in Ritzei. Right, the three before, and then Shabbos, and the fifth one would be Ritzei. Ritzei would be the fifth, so it would be like Yalav Yovel. Just like you mentioned Yalav Yovel, you'd mention the Tainus in Ritzei. It's an interesting idea. The Leisa, it's not in our Yerushalmi, okay? Leisa Fanenu.
But you can't have a Tainus in Shabbos anyway.
Well, if it gets pushed off, let's say Tishbav came out on Shabbos, you pushed it off, that would be a
So you still mention the Tainus.
That's what he's saying, it seems that. Broker Messiah. The Rokeach says, brings our Messiah, Hakel HaSalchon. You say Hakel HaSalchon. B'chein Mashiv Yerushalmi, and so too it indicates Yerushalmi. I don't know which bracha that is. Hakel, I guess, instead of Hakel HaKadosh, you would say on Yom Kippur, Hakel HaSalchon. Right?
You say Hakel,
yeah, so he's saying, Melech Rosh Hashanah, I guess this Yerushalmi and Yom Kippur, you would say Hakel HaSalchon. Maybe it's also referring to a kindness, I don't know. Anyway, I don't know where this is. Now. It says, you have to forego your anger. In other words, if you feel your measure's been filled, just forego it. It's not, we don't have this. That's why we can get angry. Broker Yerushalmi, it says Kol Gemar Maluchai, because Makadish, which makes sense. Loida Makom Avuba Mishnah. I don't know where it's Yerushalmi, but there is a Mishnah there. Broker says Yerushalmi says you say that Yetzim Mikosla Mavui. If you have pegs coming out of the wall of a Mavui, nothing is Aleim. It's going to put the beam for the front of the alley on top of them. Loida Makom, he says they don't know where that is either. Broker says Ben Al Chaim Asurim, between the Chayim. In the thickness of the poles which are at the edge of the marble you cannot carry. So I don't know where it is. It says when the Satan hears the voice of the shofar, he's shocked but not so shocked. We don't have such Yerushalmi in front of us. It says he brings down front of the Yerushalmi. A person could say to a Jewish storekeeper, I don't know what it's talking about. Leisa lefonenu. We don't have such Yerushalmi in front of us. So maybe we say these are some tiny meiser belezer bebitzara b'abashol ben botnis shuchavanim b'Yerushalayim. There's such a meiser there. Mashma dafka etzlam, which seems to indicate that specifically by these Jewish storekeepers. I know what the context is. Okay, now at the end of the entire thing here, there's Ashmotos Shoinas. First the Ashmotos from Yerushalmi Niddah, and we had also the Ashmotos back from Zroim and Moed at the end of that. It was appropriate volume. There are too many of them over here to do, but missing passages, things we're trying to bring down. But they're Let's take a look at the Hashmata Shainis from Masechta Shainis on page 16, which are just various different ones. 16. Hashmata Shainis from Masechta Shainis. Okay? The very end. No, very, very end. No, very, very end. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going.
That's it. No, one more.
Yeah, that's it. So, I don't know why it says 16 there. I don't know where that 16 number comes from. That's it. B'magid Mishnah Choschid B'Shem B'Shama Hilu Shachid Ruba de Trei Simone. This is a guy who shechted most of the two Simone checking his esophagus. V'asa Mishnah Kami Utzumri Rabbanan. And he came to ask concerning Tamachim, that was sufficient. So he asked him, what do you have in mind? He said, I had in mind to do both, but I wasn't able to finish it. The shechita is kosher, you shouldn't shecht anymore. Because although it's kosher, you're obviously not strong enough to do it. Why? You shouldn't shecht anymore. Because shechita needs careful training of the hands, and you lost your training. Okay, we don't have this Yerushalmi. None of these Yerushalmis. When the king heard the words of Sefer Torah, he ripped his clothing. When he heard, because that Sefer which Moshe made should have been rolled to the beginning. But at that time, when they read it in front of Yoshua, they found a roll to the pasuk which says, Hashem will take you and your king away into Golus. We don't have stuff, but we did have a similar Yerushalmi. Yeah, so he says your Ayin Yerushalmi is going Rishberg Vav. Maybe there's something similar over there. Maybe it's a Medrash. Maybe it's a Bavli. But we did have something like that. Ramosha Butril. The Peirush Sefer Yitzir B'Shem Yerushalmi says, Ilab miloi, if not for miloi, which means words, and here the Dr. Spadel put in, Ulai tzarich lamar mamonoi, mean, maybe it's supposed to say, money, lo chuchmasa. There's no wisdom. No money, no learning. Okay? That's a great Yerushalmi, right? Too bad that didn't make the cut. Raveinu v'chaye, let's quote that one. Raveinu v'chaye parshas Tazria, Chemri kanti sham b'shem Yerushalmi, lay sefer, lay sapar the misapar l'gamei, no barber gives himself haircuts. Okay? Sham sav parshas Masi b'shem Yerushalmi, it says there in Raveinu v'chaye, what is it? What? No. Shemisloin in him. Well, we're not going to read this one. Just going to that's a commentary. Shemisloin in Yisrael Masos. When the Jews are complained by their travels, then the Onan didn't protect them. They had to have watchmen at night in the camp. Normally the Onan protected the Jews in Midbar, except when they complained. When they complained, they needed to have watchmen actually keep watch. Prepare Perush Hashem Yuchos Rambam Sof Sefer Minyan Tarek Mitzvah B'Shem Yerushalmi Vayaka Asher Rim Moshe Yodov Gavar Yisrael. It says when Moshe lifted up his hands, Am Yisrael will be successful in war. Melamid She'edon Shenikres Yisrael B'Soicha Toras Emes. When the Eidah is called Yisrael, that's because within it has Torah of truth. Interesting thing. That the Eidah by itself is a neutral language, but here when Moshe lifted up his hands, Am Yisrael will be successful. So when the Eidah is called Yisrael, it must be that somehow there's some Torah in it which gives it that Shem Yisrael. Interesting concept. It says, Vayishmor Mishmarti, Avram kept my watch. My Mishmarti, Omra Midas Chesed. The meat of Chesed said, Kol Yimei Hayes Avram Ba'olam, as long as Avram was in the world, the Lord Tzrachti Ni Lasos Malach Shli, I didn't have to do work. Avram Oimed Shom Yikoyim V'Shomer Mishmarti. Avram was about Chesed, you didn't need the meat of Chesed in the world, Avram did it. The Sefer Kafter Perak Mem Dalet Shem Yerushalmi. Ha'u Talmuda to ask Elio Yeshiva Shamala. Certain student who's taking up Elio to Yeshiva on high. Chazi the Ikam and Rabbanim. So certain rabbis they have a Peyan Nemuchin. Some of them their faces were low. And some of the rabbis on Peyan Gavoyin their faces were high. Amalei, so he said, Inun da Peyan Gavoyin Gabeon Gvion, those whose faces are high, Shetamudu am Shogar Rifiyam, they know they're learning well. Okay? They ain't us. Ma'avzarvich is in Reish Peites, V'doime lo Yerushalmi is a similar story in Yerushalmi. Chatzab Azil B'urcha. Certain old man was walking down the street. Hashke Choy Talia was found by a certain young lad. Armor alone, so he said, Levai Leis Nami Tzavon Badi Pise Yoma de Ma'atzarta. So, I wish that oh, it's going to explain in minutes what it means there. Saduni Katfune Chazur de Kochish Cheloi Parnasei Ad Shari Midmach. Vachi Prush, what it means to say. Zokin Echor Haya Olech, but there are certain old men was working down the street. Matzu Bachurim. He was found by young lads. Amalem, and he said to the lads, Ainly be a koch, have no strength. Lachu Erev Shel Yontov Shel Tzeres, they took him Erev Shavuos, Pagdu, they remembered him, and Asuba Kotef, and they carried him on their shoulders. Peush Vesachicha Tivko L'Shalom, and that what it says in Chumash, your brothers you should visit in peace. Targ, that means you should support them. So here it means Pakod means to support. Targim V'Yasachach Tis'ad L'Shlach. When they saw this old man's strength was strapped, they support him until he died. Until he began to sleep, where he went to eternal sleep. I'm not sure the moral of that one was. The Chasma says, Pishu Rabbeinu by Yerushalmi Sheyotzel Ayoros. Says that Relaz Chasma went out to the cities. Yerushalmi and Halachos, they asked him Halachos Leidala Shivam. You know the answer. Because of the Iran, he went back to his own city, Vilna Harbe, he learned a lot. They call it Chasma, which is a language of strengthening and reforging. Because he went back and trained himself in Nasa Chosun, he became forged in his craft. It says by pottery, that's to be forged and made strong. Many great shvichos Chanukah Matzatz Yerushalmi Yolamdeinu. Why is Baloscha next to the Chanukah's Mizbech, to the Nisim which consecrated the Mizbech? She came and she krivu. This is not the famous one. It's a play in the famous Medrash. She came and she krivu Yud Beis Nesiah Shvatim Korbanon and Chanukah's Mizbech. Since the 12 leaders of the tribe brought their sacrifices, Krivu Levim, and Levim had not brought their sacrifices. Agma Nafsham, they were upset. Amar Kodesh Baruch Hu, Moshe says, Kodesh Baruch Hu said to Moshe, Daber Aaron, speak to Aaron, V'amar to love, speak to him, Baloscha Saneros. When you uplift the candles, meaning, this actually Ramban does bring this down, Chumash. Yesh Lehem Acheresh Yasu B'nei Bonav, Matisyo Kohen Godel Chashmonoi Bonav. The Aaron has an additional advantage. The Matisyo and the Chashmonoim will do this business of the Chanukah Saneros for eternity, as opposed to one shadi of Chanukah Samizbech. Right, because Chanukah, the Chanukah corresponds to Chanukah of the Chanukah Saneros. But Tshuvas Agoyim Shari Tshuva, and that actually our Chanukah corresponds to the second time they did Chanukah Mizbeach, or the third time, at the time that they reconsecrated after the Greeks. But Tshuvas Agoyim Shari Tshuva Kacha Minig Beis Rabbeinu Shel Bavel is a minig in the Yeshiva in Bavel. Shachartu is mincha b'Shabbos after mincha Shabbos shonim avos. From Pirkei Avos, Kinyan Torah, the 6th parak of Pirkei Avos. V'oda Gilan Koyisrael she'em is asking the Torah, and there's a common practice among all of Am Yisrael. They don't learn Torah ben Tfilas mincha Arvis Shabbos mincha Ma'ariv on Friday on Shabbos afternoon. Miknei Kvodesh Moshe Rabbeinu, because the honor of Moshe Rabbeinu she'niftar bosos man b'Shabbos, who died during that time on Shabbos. Vod, in order to sustain the Kanyim. Nasi shemeis only batim midrashos saying when a nasi dies, you lock the base medrash and people there's bittul Torah. But koshkin sheishlanu litzchar tamid in kvar shemosh doesn't have to remember Moshe's on it. V'ashkam Yerushalmi you find Yerushalmi. Rabbi Yeshua said, see it says zichul Torah Moshe Avdi. It says remember the Torah Moshe my servant. Ma'ishach do you see Torah's Moshe? Why say the Torah of Moshe? Elamah zechiras Torah to lo'elam. Well, just like remembering of Torah has to be forever. The Torah should take chadasha b'leiv, and has to be new in your heart b'chol yom every day. Af Moshe shekibla v'nos l'sosh Moshe who gave it, who received it and gave it, we have to remember him as well. Tzarich lios b'sfir lo'elam, we have to always remember Moshe. L'leima inish abelus yishani. Person should say, well, the morning on Moshe is old stuff, old hat. We don't need it. We always have to remember Moshe's death. Zechira chadasha. It's like the Churban Habayis. But Ashkan Tamar, we find a similar thing. Or Rabbi Zera says, Vaksi then say, Vaitamu, you may be Chievel Moshe. Then say they completed days of crying for the Avelis of Moshe. You may be Chitamu. The days of crying ended. Avos Chira so low tam. But, what do you want? No, 1, 2, 3. Avos Chira so low tam. But his commemoration doesn't stop. Of that time when she died on Shabbos afternoon. Come Abi Prachya Rav Loy, or Prach stood on his feet, and said, Didi Adif, I have a better shot. Fight mu you may bechi evel Moshe, you may bechi evel Tamu. Vahani, meaning, or if it's Vahainu, that means you may achol. The days when the person said Shiva Rachman Litzlan, on weekdays, the Kashar Bu Bechi Bevel, when was allowed to cry and be in Abelus. Ava Shabbos Lo Tam. But on Shabbos, the illusion we make to the morning on Shabbos, that the delays for Shabbos Bechi, but when there is no official crying and Avelus, the Schira Song commemoration of Moshe, Bati Midrashos, B'Tein, and Bati Medrash are in cessation, Ad Kan Lashono. The learning some Maimer Azev, Yerushalmi Golom Midrashim is no place where it's found. Finally, Sham, it's appropriate Gemara for a Siyum, or a Siyum coined this in the Siyum. Yerushalmi, it says Yerushalmi, that's the Chuvas HaGarim, Yerushalmi, Rabbi Yeshua Shem, Rabbi Zira said, Amar, Mayasi was out, it says, Upanisu Rabokar Valachto Lo Lecha. You go back in the morning, you turn in the morning, go back after coming to Beis HaMikdash, go back to your tent. Upanisa Valachto Lo Lecha. Just say you go back, and you go, turn around, you go to your tent. Dial Likro. That would be sufficient to say. Dial Likro. My panisa boker, why it's in the morning? You only go in the morning, not any time. El boker ahu. It means that morning, the morning of death. See boker lo avos. Actually, I'm not sure if it's the morning of death. It's some sort of morning by which it says in Tanakh, boker lo avos, boker the simcha. I don't know what boker lo avos means. I think a boker which is not cloudy. A boker of joy. Boker da'aktim Avram, the morning when Avram came. By Ashkem Avram Baboker, right? Avram went to the Akedah, right? Umay is Simchas Beis Shoeva. And it's the Simcha of Beis Shoeva. I don't know exactly how that fits in Simchas Shoeva. But anyway, the bottom line is that Boker Alusu times Simcha, Melami Shetzorech Simcha B'chazira Yeser Me'alicha. You have to be happier when you come back than when you go. Rabbi Simon said, Simon Ladovar, Ayisalel Chigerkim Fateach. The allusion to this is a person who's lame should not rejoice like a person who can actually walk. But Perish Radal, the Radal gives a different shot based on this Yerushalmi. Shasimcha v'hilul, the joy and praise, Roy, is more suitable to somebody who's coming back from victory of war. Umifateach me'aloh, he removes from upon himself klei milchamto, he removes the tools of war. Yois mishosh choigerosam, more than when he belts them on. So chiger is a belter. If tails one takes off the belt, shechoigerosam elech lemilchama. V'usimen ha'moshel mitzvah sachad. At the simen ha'moshel to the mitzvahs of sukkahs. That they're the simon of milchama to be rejoiced again. I see now. Simchas Beis Shoeva is on the first day of Chol HaMoed. You don't make sense to Shoeva on Yontif. And that's a panisa baboker. After the first day of Yontif at Sukkot, you turn back and go to your home and you make Simchas Beis Shoeva, right? And that's because that's when you put away the weapons. Because the weapons, the halacha is chiyuv d'oraisa of lulav, except the Beis HaMikdash is only the first day, not the rest of Yontif, right? So you put away the weapons, then you're happier, right? Because now you showed you won. So once you did the mitzvah of Sukkot the first day, the mitzvah of Lulav and the first day, it's when you came back from war, royally smell chiris. In other words, until then, from Rosh Hashanah until the first day, Sukkot, you're a mesupak whether you're going to win the war or not. But now that you put the weapons down, you're not choked anymore, you're mevatech, then you're happy when you complete something. But on completing a siyum, it's a time to be happy.